Commander Ethan Hawke stood on the observation deck of the Odyssey, gazing at the swirling nebulas outside. The vastness of space had always brought him solace, a reminder that there was more to life than the immediate chaos of politics. In recent months, he had spent countless hours figuring out how to maintain peace among the Zithri and the Relanthas, two vastly different alien civilizations that were on the brink of war. "Commander, we have a situation," his second-in-command, Lieutenant Samira Rojas, interrupted his contemplation. Her golden skin shimmered under the ship's lighting, and her amber eyes were serious. "What is it, Samira?" Ethan asked, his voice a blend of concern and curiosity. "The Zithri delegation has arrived, and they're not happy," she said, running a hand through her short, jet-black hair. "They're demanding to see you immediately." "Great. Just what I need today." Ethan sighed and straightened his uniform. "Prepare the conference room." As they made their way to the main deck, Samira shot him a mischievous smile. "You know, they say the Zithri High Council can be quite intimidating. You should have brought a gift." "Yeah? Like what? A bouquet of space flowers?" Ethan chuckled in disbelief. "Anything but that." She nudged him playfully. "But honestly, just be yourself. It's all we can do." Ethan appreciated her candor. "Thanks, Samira. I'll keep that in mind." When they reached the conference room, the atmosphere felt electric. The air thickened as the Zithri representatives entered, their skin shades ranging from deep turquoise to a luminous silver. The lead diplomat, Lyra, glided forward, her presence commanding yet graceful. "Commander Hawke," she greeted, her voice melodious yet firm. "We are here to discuss recent joint operations, particularly regarding our mutual defenses." "Thank you for coming," Ethan replied evenly. "I know tensions are high. Let's focus on what we can do to address our shared concerns." One of Lyra's aides, a stout Zithri named Garek, interjected. "You humans do not understand the psychological warfare your people have unleashed on our territory. Shipping delays and unexplained disruptions are causing distrust among our ranks." Ethan could sense Samira's agitation behind him. He knew he had to tread carefully. "I assure you, we are not responsible for the disruptions. There are rogue factions on both sides who want to stoke animosity. Our goal here is to work together, not against each other." Lyra stepped forward, her piercing silver eyes locked onto Ethan. "Your kind has a tendency to overlook the nuances of intergalactic relations. Why should we trust you?" "Because I'm standing here, ready to resolve this," Ethan said, leaning slightly forward, emphasizing his sincerity. "Let's not allow the actions of a few dictate our relationships." "Words mean little without action, Commander," Garek replied, crossing his arms. Ethan sighed. "What do you propose?" "A show of good faith." "That's a start, yes," Lyra replied thoughtfully. "But I want to see you work alongside us. Show our people you are genuinely committed to unity." "I'm all in for that," Ethan said, glancing at Samira, who nodded encouragingly. "How about we conduct a joint training exercise? Combat scenarios that will integrate both our forces." Lyra contemplated this proposal. "Your skills in unity will be tested, but it may have potential. Let's put it to the council." "Excellent. When can we start?" Ethan felt a surge of energy. "Tomorrow," Garek said. "Be prepared." "Fine by me," Ethan replied, confidence clear in his voice. "Let's make this happen." As the meeting wrapped up, Ethan and Samira escorted the Zithri back to their quarters. Out of earshot, Samira leaned toward Ethan. "You really think they'll go for it?" "Depends on how they perceive our intentions," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "But I don't think we'll get a better opportunity. Lyra is willing to negotiate." "That's promising." "She certainly has fire," Samira remarked, a knowing smile on her face. "Maybe you'll need that fire to light a spark." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You think so? I have enough on my plate without contemplating romance with an alien diplomat." "Come on. You can't tell me you didn't feel something when she looked at you," Samira teased, nudging him again. "Okay, maybe she's intriguing," he admitted, a reluctant smirk tugging at his lips. "But I have to focus on the mission first." "Of course, Mr. Noble. But just in case you're wondering," Samira paused, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "If you find yourself in a Zithri tent, make sure you know how to dance." "Dance? I have 2 left feet." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Perfect. That'll make it even better," she shot back. Despite the undercurrent of tension, Ethan felt lighter. If humor could diffuse anger, they stood a better chance at bridging the gap between the Zithri and humans. The next day, the training exercise began under a swirling green sky, the Zithri and human squads struggling to adapt to each other's techniques. Ethan demonstrated hand-to-hand combat, emphasizing speed and agility. "Remember, faceless opponents are just that. Focus on your partner," he called out, shifting between Relantha soldiers and Zithri. Lyra, her focus intense, matched his every move. During a brief break, she approached Ethan. You lead well. Many could learn from your methods. Thank you, Lyra. Your people are skilled. It's impressive to see how quickly they adapted, he said, genuinely acknowledging her kind's capabilities. Perhaps our races have more in common than we realize, she replied, her voice softening. Maybe we do, he agreed, their eyes locking for a moment too long. Just then, a sudden roar erupted. Another squad had an unexpected mishap. Ethan rushed toward the noise, immediately concerned. The atmosphere shifted, tension snapping back like a taut thread. Stay close, he yelled over the chaos. Amid the uproar, Ethan swept his hand protectively around Lyra's waist, guiding her to safety. The moment sparked a new awareness between them, the energy ignited. Remember to trust one another, he urged the teams. That's our strength. As the exercise wound down and the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan and Lyra found themselves alone, the last remnants of tension dissipating into the twilight. That was impressive, Lyra said, her voice calm despite the earlier chaos. Thanks. It's about finding rhythm. It's like dancing, he replied, a playful grin breaking through. Dancing? Ah yes, you were quite the unintentional performer today, she teased back. Ethan chuckled, the chemistry between them palpable. Well, let's hope I don't step on anyone's toes next time. The conversation flowed easily, laughter echoing in the night. In that moment, despite their differences, Ethan felt a connection growing, one born from collaboration, understanding, and perhaps something more profound. Chapter 2, Bonds of Trust. The following day dawned gray and muted aboard the Odyssey, a stifling tension lingering in the air. Ethan stood in front of the console reviewing the training session's performance reports. His thoughts raced as he tried to predict how the Scytheri would react to their joint exercises. Hey, Commander, you look like you're trying to solve an intergalactic riddle, Samira said, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. Ethan glanced up, forcing a smile. Just going over the training data. The Scytheri team showed unexpected adaptability. I'm impressed, honestly. Good to hear, Samira replied, walking into the room. You know, you could also use a break. Grab a coffee, relax a bit. Coffee sounds perfect, he admitted. Maybe I could use a little downtime before things heat up again. As they made their way to the lounge, Samira grinned mischievously. You know, if you keep looking at Lyra like that, the rest of the crew might get jealous. Look at her? I'm just trying to keep things professional. Ethan protested, though he couldn't hide the smirk curling at the corners of his lips. Right? Professional. The way you two are locking eyes, I'd say you're something more, she teased, arching a brow. Okay, maybe she's interesting and sharp, but I still have a job to do, Ethan replied, laughter in his voice. Relationships will have to wait. We need to keep the peace. Of course, peace, Samira said, rolling her eyes. But I just wonder how you'll keep it if you're not forming bonds with them. Trust is part of the equation, right? As they reached the lounge, the atmosphere buzzed with conversations. The Scytheri delegation had started to blend with the crew more openly, breaking down barriers. Ethan scanned the room and spotted Lyra, her vibrant turquoise skin glowing under the soft lights. Looks like they've taken to our facilities, Samira noted, nudging Ethan gently. Now's your chance. Chance? Ethan feigned ignorance, though he could feel his heart racing. Just go talk to her. Samira pushed him forward and Ethan found himself approaching Lyra. Commander Hawk, she greeted, her voice warm yet composed. I was hoping to speak with you. Lyra, it's good to see you, Ethan replied, trying to keep his composure. How are the Scytheri adjusting? We are finding your ship comfortable. Though it takes time to adapt to these new environments, she said, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. What about you? How are humans handling the shared training? Adaptability is our strong suit, but you all are quick learners. I was impressed, he admitted. A soft smile crept across her face, and Ethan felt a flutter in his chest. Perhaps we can learn more from each other than just tactics. We can share our cultures. I'd love that, Ethan said. What do you have in mind? How about a demonstration? A cultural exchange of sorts, Lyra suggested, excitement woven into her tone. Ethan chuckled. Dance lessons? I might need a little practice to get up to Scytheri standards. Dance is just one expression of our culture, she replied, her eyes twinkling. What about our storytelling? Our histories are rich and vibrant. Storytelling sounds perfect, he said, intrigued. What will you share? We Scytheri have tales about the void, the stars, and the lessons learned from both fear and wonder, she said, her voice serene. And perhaps you could share about your own history? Sure. But I warn you, humanity's history is not always glamorous, he replied with a chuckle. Neither is ours, she declared, her gaze firm yet inviting. It's the growth from that history that defines us. Just then, Garrick approached, cutting into their conversation with a frown. Commander, may I have a word? Ethan turned his attention to Garrick, suppressing his rising annoyance. Of course, Garrick. What's on your mind? The council is concerned about today's training exercise. There's talk of dissent growing in the ranks, Garrick said, his voice low. Some of our people feel uneasy working alongside your crew. We need to address this. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. What do you suggest we do? We need to conduct more joint exercises, but they must include critical scenarios where teamwork is paramount. A situation where we have to depend on one another, Garrick insisted. Lyra nodded in agreement. That's a wise move. Building trust takes effort, and nothing builds trust quite like overcoming challenges together. Okay, we'll organize more simulations, Ethan affirmed, already brainstorming ideas. But we'll also need to foster communication between your peoples and ours. Good. But it must be genuine, Garrick warned. A facade will not suffice. I understand, Ethan replied, appreciation for Garrick's directness growing. Thank you for being upfront with me. As Garrick walked away, Lyra turned to Ethan. There's a reason trust is built through hardship. It's often the challenges that bring people closer. Agreed, Ethan said, momentarily lost in her eyes. So how do we proceed? We must be proactive. Today's exercise can be structured as a simulated crisis. We can set up scenarios that force both our teams to communicate and rely on one another to SCHD, she explained. That sounds promising. Ethan lifted his eyebrows, enthusiasm creeping in. I'll organize the logistics and distribute the roles evenly. Good. When do we start? She asked, determination in her tone. Let's do it right now. The sooner, the better. We can fit in a quick scenario before lunch. You can lead your team while I lead mine, he suggested. Let's meet in the training bay in 10 minutes, she said, her energy infectious. Ethan nodded, feeling his heart quicken. I'll see you there. As she walked away, Ethan exchanged glances with Samira, who was waiting just outside. What was that all about? She grinned. Just planning our next training exercise with Lyra, he replied, trying to maintain his composure, feeling a rush of unfamiliar excitement. You're getting closer, I see, Samira smirked. This is good for both of you and frankly for your people. Yeah, but it's still about trust and diplomacy, Ethan said. We can't let our feelings get in the way. Feelings or not, you're building a bridge, Samira said, nudging him with her shoulder. And I think you'd be a fool to ignore it. As they reached the training bay, Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the exercise. There, he spotted Lyra rallying the Zithari team, her demeanor a mixture of authority and encouragement. All right, let's do this, Ethan muttered, determination washing over him. Today was about more than just training. It was about forging connections that could change everything moving forward. Let's go, Commander, Samira grinned. Ethan stepped onto the training floor, feeling a flicker of excitement. He would not only protect humanity, he would show them just how deep the bonds of cooperation could run. Today was their first step toward something greater. Each moment could be a building block, and he hoped it made all the difference. Chapter 3, Through the Storm. The atmosphere aboard the Odyssey was tense as everyone prepared for the day's exercise. Ethan paced the training bay, reviewing the simulation scenario in his mind. It involved a series of split-second decisions, teamwork, and adaptability, traits he hoped both teams had learned to embrace. Commander, Samira called, striding into the training bay, her expression focused. The Zithari crew is gearing up. They look eager. Good. We need that energy today, Ethan replied, adjusting his jacket. Did you check on Lyra? She's with her team, providing the final details, Samira said, her tone full of encouragement. Let's hope the Zithari can handle some pressure. Pressure will be a test for both sides, he replied. Do you think they'll crumble under the simulation? Not if we give them a chance to lead. It's a team effort, Samira said, her eyes sparkling with determination. Right? I'll make sure to delegate the key roles evenly, Ethan decided. This isn't just about winning, it's about how we come together. As the teams gathered, Ethan glanced around. The Zithari were a mix of confident and apprehensive, while his own crew looked equally charged. He spotted Lyra a few paces away, discussing strategies with her team. She caught his eye and offered a small smile. His heart raced at the sight. All right, everyone. Ethan called, raising his voice to command attention. Today we're going to face a simulated crisis. You'll be divided into mixed teams, Sci-fi and humans. The objective is to resolve a conflict and find a way to safety. Lyra stepped forward. Let's make it clear, communication is critical. If we cannot trust each other, the simulation will fail. I couldn't agree more, Ethan said, nodding at her insights. Each team will be given a different perspective of the crisis. You'll need to collaborate to piece everything together. Garrick raised a hand. What if things start to fall apart? In a real situation, we cannot afford to hesitate. Ethan glanced at Lyra, who appeared thoughtful. Part of this exercise is learning how to adapt when unexpected variables arise. If something goes wrong, regroup and reassess. Fine words, Commander, Garrick replied, crossing his arms. But theory and practice are often miles apart. Then let's put theory into practice, Ethan challenged, his voice firm. Are we ready? Ready, the teams responded. Lyra's expression grew serious. Let's split into our groups and begin. Ethan gestured for his team to follow him. We will handle the ground logistics. Let's check our equipment. The training bay was filled with the sounds of chatter as everyone moved into their designated areas. Ethan felt a flicker of anxiety but pushed it aside. He and Samira began checking the gear while keeping an eye on Lyra's group. Looks like they're organizing well, Samira said. They have a solid approach to strategy. Yeah, but good execution is key, Ethan said, his tone thoughtful. I want them to SD, but I don't want to go easy on them either. Understood. It's a delicate balance, Samira agreed, returning her focus to the gear. As the groups readied themselves, Ethan felt his heart race. We'll facilitate different scenarios based on real-world conflicts. Let's see how they manage the challenges at hand. When they were set, Ethan activated the simulation controls. All right, we'll trigger the first scenario now. A shimmering holographic environment materialized, simulating a hostile landscape filled with obstacles and complicated terrain. The urgent sounds of alarms rang out, setting the tone. Your first task is to regroup by the hazardous area, Ethan announced. You'll encounter unexpected complications. A visible tension settled over both teams. Ethan took a breath, hoping everything would unfold as intended. Lyra rallied her team. We'll take this route. We need to stay low and move fast. Let's form a protective line and proceed carefully, one of her teammates suggested. Good idea. Humans, do you have any input? Lyra asked, glancing toward Ethan's team. Ethan stepped forward. If we stick with covering fire, we can handle any surprises along the way. Trust one another and move swiftly. The teams responded with quick nods, and as they progressed through the simulation, the stakes heightened. It wasn't long before alarms blared, signaling the first major obstacle, a simulated explosion. Take cover. Ethan shouted, watching as everyone scrambled for safety. Lyra remained calm as she shouted orders. Dodge left, set up a barrier using debris. Good thinking. Ethan encouraged, moving alongside her as they worked together to guide their teams. Fix the formation. Keep your eyes open, she called, issuing commands with authority. As the simulation pressed on, things began to fall apart. A few members of Ethan's crew lost focus, and he could see unease creeping into the Sci-Fi's expressions. Regroup. Find your partner and communicate, Ethan shouted. Desperation edged his voice as he yelled over the chaos. Garrick stumbled back, visibly shaken. We can't predict what's coming. We're at a disadvantage. You handle this. Don't throw in the towel yet, Ethan said, his throat tightening. Adjust your approach. If you're feeling overwhelmed, look toward your partners for guidance. They're here to support you. They were losing precious time, but LYR. Nicate and tackle this together. Systems go. He glanced at Lyra, who nodded, understanding the importance of the moment. Here's our chance, people. Let's show them what we can do. With newfound determination, Garrick turned to his Sci-Fi partner. What do you think we should do? I believe we should take the left path and set an ambush for the next obstacle, the Sci-Fi responded confidently. As they moved forward, Ethan could see their bond strengthening. The Sci-Fi and humans worked in sync, modifying their strategy, focusing on collaboration. Finally, after intense minutes of navigating the simulated mayhem, they reached the safe zone. Well done, Ethan exclaimed as the scenario came to an end, the simulated threat dissipating. Breathing heavily, Lyra approached him, her cheeks flushed with excitement. We did it, Ethan. We actually did it. Yeah, and you all nailed it. The way you took charge, it was impressive. Ethan replied, pride swelling inside him. Let's not get too comfortable, Garrick warned, a hint of a smile breaking through. The exercise was just a test. We need to evaluate what went right and where we struggled. Right? Lyra agreed. We can learn from our mistakes and our victories. The important thing is we started trusting each other. Ethan nodded. Together, we can face whatever challenges come our way. Let's take these lessons forward, both on and off the training floor. As they wrapped up the debriefing, Ethan felt a sense of camaraderie rising among them. They were building something meaningful, something much larger than mere diplomacy. In that moment, he couldn't help but glance at Lyra, who flashed him a radiant smile. He felt a warmth spread through him, and understanding that they were embarking on more than just a diplomatic mission, they were initiating a journey that could alter their destinies forever. Chapter 4: Choices and Sacrifices. The day after the training exercise, Ethan awoke to the gentle vibrations of the Odyssey as it glided through the depths of space. The mission had gained momentum after yesterday's successful simulation, but there was an undercurrent of tension he couldn't shake. Something felt looming, and he resolved to address it during the morning briefing. As he entered the command room, he spotted Samira already at the central table, flipping through a stack of reports. "Morning, Commander. Ready to tackle today's agenda?" "Morning, Samira. Let's hope today isn't as chaotic as yesterday," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "Chaos seems to be the theme of our lives. Should we dive into the debrief?" Samira asked, looking up with a grin. Ethan nodded. "Let's see how the Zithari reacted to the exercises and what we can do to build on that." Just then, the door slid open and Lyra entered, her presence instantly commanding attention. "Commander, Lieutenant. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Lyra. We were just discussing the next steps following the training exercise," Ethan replied. "How did your crew feel about it?" "They've taken to it well. There is still some skepticism, but it's improving," she said. "However, I believe we must continue to push our teams to rely on each other." "Agreed," Ethan said. "The quicker we make this transition, the better. We should also introduce a new exercise, one that simulates negotiations and conflict resolution," Lyra suggested, her eyes bright with excitement. "This is more than just combat readiness. It's about how we communicate under pressure." "That's a solid idea," Samira chimed in. "Both sides have unique skills that can contribute to that. We could run simultaneous scenarios where each team has differing goals yet must find a way to cooperate." "Excellent. When can we start?" Lyra asked, determination evident in her voice. "Soon. We can set it up within the next few hours," Ethan replied. "Let's get the teams prepped." As they worked out the details, Ethan felt a sense of unity growing within their group. However, amidst the camaraderie, a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. What if the true test of their partnership came from the challenges beyond training exercises? Later that day, as Ethan prepared for the negotiations exercise, he received an urgent communication from the fleet's command. His heart sank as he read the message. "We've got an issue. There's been an attack near the outer colonies. Fleet Command wants us to assess the situation before any action is taken." "What's going on?" Samira asked, peering over his shoulder. Ethan took a deep breath. "A Relanthus ship has been reported missing, and there are signs of distress. They want us to evaluate whether they were attacked or if it's just a malfunction." Lyra entered the room again, her brows furrowing in concern. "What is it?" "Command wants us to head to the outer colonies. A Relanthus ship is missing, and they suspect hostile action," Ethan explained. "Hostile action? This could escalate the situation between our peoples," Lyra said, panic creeping into her tone. "Exactly," Ethan replied. "We need to understand what happened before jumping to conclusions or assigning blame." Samira stepped forward. "I'll gather the team and prep the ship for departure. We need to move quickly." As she left, Ethan turned to Lyra. "What do you think? Should we bring the Zithari along?" "Absolutely. If this is an attack, we need to show unity. It will send a signal that neither of us condone violence," Lyra affirmed, her resolve unyielding. Ethan nodded, appreciating her conviction. "I'll have our teams notified. Let's hope we can resolve this before it becomes a larger conflict." A few hours later, the Odyssey arrived at the outer colonies. The damaged Relanthus ship floated ominously, debris scattered across the vicinity. A tense silence filled the command deck as Ethan and Lyra surveyed the scene. Initial scans indicate damage consistent with a hull breach. "No life signs reported aboard," Samira announced, her voice strained. "We need to assess the ship for survivors," Ethan said, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Lyra, you and your team should board with us. The more perspectives we have, the better. Lyra agreed, galvanizing her crew. Stay sharp. We don't know what we'll find. As they boarded the derelict ship, Ethan's heart raced. The shadows cast by their flashlights danced eerily across the corridors. The air was thick with tension and an unshakable sense of foreboding. They arrived at the command center, where the damage was evident. Screens flickered with static, and the ship was eerily silent. Garrick assessed a console, frowning. It seems there was a communication failure. The last transmission was a distress call. Can we trace it? Ethan asked, urgency coloring his tone. Garrick tapped furiously at the screen. It's weak. But it appears they reported an unidentified object approaching just before their systems went down. Ethan glanced at Lyra. What if it was deliberate? Let's review the logs, she suggested. As they worked together, their exchanged glances sparked a deeper understanding. Each of them worried not just for their people but for the fragile peace they were building. Suddenly, the room shook with a low rumble. What was that? Samira exclaimed, steadying herself against a nearby console. Could be residual systems failing, Ethan said, though unease crept in. Or something worse, Garrick noted, looking toward the exit. We should move. As they made their way back toward the docking bay, alarms blared and lights flickered. Ethan felt his stomach drop. We need to evacuate. Quickly this way, Lyra urged, leading the group with determination. However, as they pushed forward, the ship jolted violently. Ethan stumbled, and chaos erupted. Get to the escape pod, he shouted, trying to maintain order. Commander, Samira yelled, her voice strained. We can't separate. We're a unit. Lyra grasped Ethan's arm. This way, stay together. They navigated through the chaos, but Garrick fell back. You go. I'll cover you. What? No, Ethan shouted, panic rising. We have to make it, Garrick insisted, desperation clawing at his voice. Just go. I can hold them off. Garrick, don't. Ethan started, but it was too late. With a heart-wrenching decision, Ethan pressed forward with Lyra and the rest of the team, leaving behind their comrade. The escape pods whirred to life, and Ethan could barely think of anything but Garrick's sacrifice as they launched away from the doomed ship. As they re-entered the Odyssey, the gravity of their collective loss weighed heavily. Ethan leaned against the wall, staring blankly ahead while the sounds of the ship's interior filled the space. A stark contrast to the chaos they had just witnessed. We need to regroup, Samira mumbled, trying to bring focus back into the room. Lyra's voice was soft but strong. We lost a valuable member of our team today. We need to process this together. Together, Ethan echoed, struggling with his feelings. The consequences of the day felt heavier than he could bear. What do we do now? Now we honor Garrick's sacrifice. We ensure that those responsible are held accountable, Lyra said insistently. Ethan looked at her, seeing a fire in her eyes he had grown to respect. You're right. We'll make this matter. We'll find out who or what attacked that ship. As they stood together in the aftermath of their loss, Ethan realized that in those moments of despair, it wasn't just about peace between their peoples. It was about the sacrifices they were willing to make for each other, no matter the cost. The storm ahead would require all their strength, but they were determined to face it together. Chapter 5, A New Dawn. The aftermath of their harrowing encounter with the relentless ship weighed heavily on everyone aboard the Odyssey. Though the attack had ended in tragedy, the shared experience had tightened the bonds between Ethan, Lyra, and their respective teams. The ship hummed with a mix of tension and determination as they prepared for the next steps. Ethan stood at the command console, staring at the vastness of space that lay before him. It felt surreal. Just days ago, they'd been focused on improving collaboration between their peoples. Now, they were thrust into a new reality, one that required immediate action. Commander, Samira said, interrupting his thoughts, I've compiled the data from the relentless ship and what we were able to retrieve from their systems. Let's see it, Ethan replied, gesturing for her to display the information. The screen flickered to life, revealing fragmented sensor logs from the relentless ship. There was a spike in activity just before the distress signal, Samira said, pointing at the visual data on the screen. It indicates they were monitoring something unusual in their vicinity. Lyra joined them, peering over Ethan's shoulder. Can we link this to anything specific? Perhaps a ship or a group? I've been analyzing the data regarding known ships in this area, Samira said, scrolling through the readings. But I need more time to cross-reference with our previous encounters. There's a lot we still don't know. Agreed, Ethan said. Let's focus on what we can confirm. We need to understand if this was an isolated incident or the start of something larger. Just then, Garrick stepped into the command room, his demeanor serious as he approached the group. Commander, I've received a transmission from the Zithri High Council. What's it about? Ethan asked, turning his attention to him. The council has expressed concern over our handling of the situation, Garrick said, his voice steady but filled with frustration. They want assurances that we will pursue justice for Garrick's sacrifice. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. We will pursue justice. We owe that to him and to everyone affected by this. Garrick squared his shoulders, eyes firm. Good. But I suggest you prepare for pressure from both sides. This is no longer just about negotiation, it's about accountability. Then let's make sure we're unified when we present our findings, Lyra said, her eyes narrowing with resolve. The council needs to see we are committed to pursuing this matter together. Right? I'll gather everyone for a briefing in an hour. Just keep in mind that our next steps must emphasize cooperation, Ethan said, feeling a surge of determination. We stay together on this. As they moved through the ship preparing for the briefing, Ethan found himself speaking with Lyra privately, stepping into a quieter corridor. You're handling all of this remarkably well, considering the circumstances. I appreciate your support. Lyra smiled faintly. We've faced much worse before, Commander. The true test lies ahead. True, but it's still incredibly difficult, he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't expect this level of complexity in our mission. Neither did I, she replied, her gaze steady. Yet we cannot allow fear to dictate our decisions. We must face this head-on. As they scheduled the briefing, Ethan felt a surge of appreciation for the bond they had built. If they were to navigate through this turmoil, they had to rely on each other completely. An hour later, the command room filled with both human and Zithri personnel. Ethan glanced around, taking note of the tension that simmered in the air. He cleared his throat, calling for attention. Thank you all for gathering. Today, we need to address the unfortunate loss of Garrick and the situation surrounding the Relanthus ship, Ethan began, his voice solid but laced with emotion. I recognize that this is not just a matter of protocol. It's personal for all of us. Lyra stepped forward. Garrick's bravery cannot go unrecognized. We are not here solely to assign blame, we seek to understand and learn. Our people rely on our actions now more than ever. Ethan nodded, appreciating her perspective. Exactly. We will analyze the data we've gathered and work on a plan to investigate further. But we must also raise our voices together to call for accountability. What exactly do you propose? One of the Zithri team members spoke up, his voice resonating through the room. Trust has been deeply shaken. Ethan took a moment, preparing his response. What I propose is that we combine our resources for this investigation. We'll need ships and personnel ready for whatever comes ahead. We are stronger together than divided. There may be opposition from both sides, Garrick added, leaning forward. Both our councils can be reluctant to accept allegations without sufficient proof. Then we gather that proof, Lyra responded, unwavering. We will use Garrick's sacrifice as motivation. If we want to create lasting change, we must be relentless. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Let's discuss the approach, Ethan said, sensing a wave of unity in the atmosphere. Samira, what do you need to compile the next steps? I'll need to coordinate logistics and connect with our respective fleets for support, Samira replied quickly. The sooner we mobilize, the better. Then let's finalize it, Ethan encouraged. If anyone has additional ideas, now is the time. Another team member, a young human named Marcus, raised his hand. What if we reach out to the other colonies that have reported similar incidents? We could gather intelligence from multiple locations and see if there's a pattern. Excellent point, Ethan said, nodding. Let's add that as a priority. Lyra's expression softened, her eyes meeting Ethan's. Then it's settled. We pursue this issue as one unit. Whatever comes, we face it together. The room broke into a collaborative buzz. Ethan felt a swell of pride for the diverse group before him. They were no longer just representatives of their races, they were allies forging ahead into the unknown. Later, as teams scrambled to prepare, Ethan found Lyra standing at the observation deck once more. I never expected so many complications, she admitted, staring into the void of space. Ethan stepped up beside her. Neither did I. I thought our mission was straightforward, diplomacy and collaboration. But it seems there is so much more we need to navigate. Life in the galaxies can be unpredictable, she said, turning to face him. But it's also beautiful in its chaos. It's what makes us who we are. He nodded, appreciating her perspective. It's about finding our place in that chaos, right? We can't allow the shadows of the past to dictate our future. I agree, she said softly, her gaze unwavering. Together, we can illuminate the path ahead. In that moment, under the sprawling stars, Ethan felt a surge of determination. They were forging a new legacy, not just for themselves but for all the civilizations they represented. The journey would not be easy, but united, they could navigate the unknown. Let's get to work, then, he suggested, the fire of purpose igniting within him. With renewed vigor, they turned and walked back toward the command deck. They had choices to make, and while the road ahead was uncertain, sharing it side by side made all the difference. Together they would face whatever awaited them in the stars.